So I went back for day 2 yesterday, which ended up actually being 4 hours shorter than promised, as we finished after just 8 hours, but within that time it still managed to be probably the most eventful day I've ever had in poker, but unfortunately for the wrong reasons and not everything to do with flops and turns and rivers. I made it through by the end of the day with 66k, which is relatively short stat, but there's now only 120 left. But for the first time really ever, just found myself not really caring about that too much because of what had happened earlier in the day. It's the main event of them all has happened about an hour before the end of the day, where for the first time I'd flopped a set of 9s on a board of Queen 9-3 check, turn pairs to Queen. And this young French guy who played really well, it seemed an okay guy really, checked and I bet 5,000, called, and the river's an 8, so I still basically feel like I've got the nuts here. He checks at about 18,000, which is a big bet, and I'm praying for it to get called. And he goes into the tank for ages, and eventually he picks up the chips to call, takes them in his hands, and they cross the line. And when they're about an inch from the felt, I just think in my mind that he's called. So I flinch, and I'm kind of ready to turn the cards over. He now takes the chips, pulls them back, has a big think about what's just happened, and basically I had given the game away, and is able to pass. And at first I just thought, what a horribly dirty trick. So I called the floor, I had no idea what was going to happen. The ruling went against me, when I think that might well be right, although it really wouldn't surprise me if it wouldn't. I don't know at all. Once again, I've kind of felt helpless in the argument by not being able to speak French at all, because that always seems to be the trump card. But that aside, then it was just a horribly dirty trick to play. Some people might call it an angle sheet. I go one step further and call it cheating, basically. And my initial reaction was just kind of anger at the injustice. I was able to put that aside for an hour or two because I knew how important it was to concentrate on playing. But by the end of the day, actually, it wasn't anger. It just made me feel really down, because when you travel around playing this game, then it's important that people kind of behave themselves. So for people to do dirty things like that to try and get themselves a little advantage just seems a really kind of depressing thing to me, really. So it left me not really caring too much about what happened. It didn't help that that was on the back of not a piece of cheating, but the only other low thing that someone can do in poker, which is the slow roll. French player opens up for 2,400. They're only paying 18k. I have queens and I ship. And when you ship and they think for a second with only you've got queens, you think, phew, I'm ahead now. They think for 5 seconds, you think I'm definitely ahead now. She then says, really, all of that? And eventually makes the call, and yes, she turns over 2 aces. That was pretty bad. The board runs out dry, and she then says, thank you very much, and I couldn't quite believe it, really. I think she might have been an inexperienced player, so it's excusable to some extent, but it's still obviously a pretty grim thing to do. So those 2 things just kind of left me, for the first time, really thinking, like, I don't really care about the chip counts, the flops, anything like that. I really don't want to be part of a game that's played like that. And to be fair, I'd woken up in the morning and see the wider picture that almost never, it's not. Those are the 2 most rotten things I've ever seen. And they actually both happened in the same day. So I can see the wider picture now, but it left me feeling pretty down, which is a shame, because it was a really interesting day and ended on the penultimate hand of the night, with me rivering a straight on ace, king, queen, queen, 6 at a paired board, betting 10k into what had been a very tight, predictable player who shipped it for 35k more. I thought for about 6 minutes and eventually passed the straight. No idea whether it was right. I think it was, to be honest. I can't see him ever having a bluff, and I can't see him ever value betting anything less than the house. But it was a pretty fascinating day's poker. Ended with me 66,000, but we're hoping for a more successful and more enjoyable day to date. Okay.